Hey Navigators, today we are at the University of Florida. You can see it right up there. I'm also sporting my authentic 90s Gator sweatpants. That's right, it's been a long time since I've been back here. Over 20 years since I even visited. So it's gonna be a fun nostalgic ride in a beautiful campus in a beautiful city. So let's hit the road. Today we're in Gainesville, Florida, in Alachua County, to take a ride through the historic and beautiful campus of the University of Florida. All right, Navigators, here we are on campus at the University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida. I went to college here, well, before I was gray, which was a long time ago because I started graying in my 20s. I don't know if I grayed enough that anyone could notice when I was in college, but it was visible right after, I'll tell you that. So when I think about how best you guys can experience this journey, like ideally, there's like those people that have gone to the University of Florida, and then there's those people that are maybe interested in going to the University of Florida. And then there's people that just want to sit on the back of my Navi with me and take the virtual ride and hear stories about the campus. And it's hard to figure out which way to present this information because I want everyone from all the points of view to be satisfied. But the challenge with people that went to the University of Florida is that they all have their own experiences. They all focused on different majors, went to different buildings associated with those majors. Some were involved in sororities or fraternities, some were not. Some were involved in athletics, some were not. And some were involved in the arts and some were not. So it's hard to figure out how to present this material to make everybody happy. So I will do my best, and the best I can do is kind of share my experience, and hopefully maybe the experience of college will translate to everyone who attended college. Okay, since I was a little kid, 9 years old, my dad brings home from work a black and white reel-to-reel video camera. This was way back in the day. And my brothers and I made a stupid video, a Western, in our kitchen. But watching that back on television at that time was life-altering for me because it showed in a way that was unparalleled at the time that you could actually have an idea, create it, put it on video, and then actually watch it on your television. This was before the internet. This was before digital video. So this was like game-changing concepts. From that point on, I just wanted to make movies. I studied movies as much as I could. This is again before the internet. And so that started me down the path in high school where I wanted to make movies, but there were no film schools. This was before the indie film explosion in the 90s with Quentin Tarantino and the like. I was just at the precipice of that. So the best thing I could do arts-wise was I got involved in theater in high school. I then went to the University of Florida with two of my brothers. We all went together. They went to junior college and then went up to do their senior year. I went as a freshman, and I was going to study theater because they didn't have a film school. The only college in Florida at the time that had a film school was Florida State, but my brothers and I going together was kind of like a package deal that my parents could afford to help assist a little bit. And through my dad's work, he knew people who worked at the nearby hospital that could help us get administrative positions to help us pay for college as we went. So University of Florida was my only option, and honestly, I would never get in today. I was not a great student. So I ended up staying as close to the movie dream as I could with the options that I had, and that was studying theater. So I studied performance and acting in theater. I got a degree in fine arts, a bachelor's in fine arts. And after college, I acted professionally in theater and, small TV things and things like that in Florida. And then eventually had to stop that because of my health issues. My health was too unpredictable. So then I worked in television in Orlando after that. And then I had to quit that because of my health issues. So at that point, I just turned to writing. In order to express my creativity, I wrote a lot of screenplays just for my own creative output. I eventually then started to write some novels and also shot a lot of videos, shot a lot of small movies, short movies, really low budget feature movies, just again, for my own creative expression. It wasn't to make a lot of money or do anything like that. It was just because it was where all my interest and creativity resided. And what's funny is that this channel, the Navi-Gators and all that, is a further expression of that. It is way downstream from my time at the University of Florida. But what am I doing? I'm taking these short journeys on a motorcycle, which I've always wanted to do since I was a kid as well. And while I'm taking these motorcycle rides for my own relaxation, I get to record them and share them with you. I get to shoot video, edit video, add some graphics, do some voiceover, write a script. I get to enjoy storytelling again. So that love that I had when I was 9 years old, it's crazy. All these years later, it's manifested itself now, over 40, as a guy who still puts all that together for a YouTube channel about riding a Navi through small towns. It's so amazing to me how your initial instincts, your initial passions, the creativity that each of us uniquely has and is expressed in its own unique way through our personalities, our life experiences, things like that. And for me, it ends up here on the Navi-Gator channel. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? I mean, seriously, that's nuts. Ah, yes, Beaty Towers. These are two 12-story towers named East and West, and they were built in 1967, named after a guy named Robert C. Beaty, a former UF Dean of Students who served from 1931 to 1960. You know, when I went to school, the University of Florida was known as the #1 party school in the country. It's hard for me to believe then that it actually started out as a seminary. Back in 1853, it was called the East Florida Seminary, and it was later acquired by a private Kingsbury Academy in Ocala. After the Civil War, the seminary moved to Gainesville. And in 1905, the seminary was consolidated with the state's land-grant Florida Agricultural College, and it became the University of Florida. And the Gainesville site for the campus was chosen in 1906. The first semester began on September 26, 1906, with 102 students. There were 2 buildings completed at that time, which are still here today. Buckman Hall was completed in 1906, named after the author of the Buckman Act. And the Buckman Act was a Florida law passed by the state legislature in 1905 that reorganized the state's institutions of higher learning. And Thomas Hall was also completed in 1906, named after the mayor of Gainesville. It wasn't until 1924 that UF admitted its first female full-time students. It didn't become fully co-educational until 1947. 11 years later, in 1958, UF admitted its first black students, and it was a significant step toward desegregation, and it reflected the broader civil rights progress in Florida at the time. Now, the alligator mascot was adopted in 1911, and it was inspired by Florida's wildlife. And the orange and blue colors were formalized, blending the predecessor school's color schemes. Before the University of Florida adopted the Gators as their mascot, their teams were called the Florida Boys. Yeah, not a lot of power behind that. Not really intimidating, is it? Who we playing? The Florida Boys. Ooh. This awesome bell tower is called the Century Tower. It was built in 1953 and stands 157 feet tall. It was built to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the founding of the UF's original institution, the East Florida Seminary. And it also serves as a memorial for students and alumni who died both in World War I and World War II. It is so beautiful, isn't it? I love the red brick here. I loved living in Gainesville. It's so much bigger now than it was when I was here. But I loved the red brick. I loved the hills. But I think the campus is so beautiful. It is just, as my wife says, you really have to like red brick. And I do. I love red brick because of my experiences at the University of Florida. What's interesting to me is that the campus hasn't changed a lot. You know, there's some of these buildings that are over 100 years old. Unfortunately, there was a way to the loading dock at the back of the Constance Theater, where I spent a lot of my time hanging out backstage and outside in between rehearsals and things like that. And the path to that is different than when I was here. So unfortunately, I didn't know how to get back there to kind of share that with you. But I spent so much time at the Student Union, which is connected to the theater. And it was funny because I was involved in theater, but I was never comfortable as a theater guy in the sense that I just wanted to make movies. You know, one of my best friends in college, we both really had a passion for film over theater, but again, this was our only way to get an education in that artistic arena. And he ended up being very successful, working at many major cable networks at very high levels, producing a lot of content you would all have seen. It was just so funny to think back in the day when, we'd hang out at the Burger King across from campus and dream about making movies and talk about the entertainment industry. And he was able to reach so many of those dreams. And unfortunately, my health issues just kind of got in the way. But looking back, I don't regret it. Just because it wasn't the path I chose doesn't mean it has not been a rewarding path with my family and everything. But being back here on campus just reminds me of those years where, at least for me, trying to figure out what it was to be a man, what it was to be an adult, how to effectively express that. And one of the things that helped me the most is I was so lucky to have a teacher that was just one of the rare, exceptional teachers that hopefully everyone has one that crosses their path that makes such a difference. The teacher that I had that really made so much of a difference in my life was a theater teacher called David Shelton. He was a doctor, PhD. And he just loved the arts so much. And he was offended by people who didn't respect it as much as he did. And he was also brutally honest. So if you asked him his opinion on something, he gave it. Because at the end of the day, he wanted you to succeed, but he wasn't going to sugarcoat on how you needed to get there. If you were not good, he told you. If you were overweight, he told you. If you were too short, he told you. If he didn't think you were going to make it, for whatever reason, he'd tell you. But the greatest thing he did for me was that he expected so much more of me than I ever had of myself. And because of that, and because I respected him so much, I spent all my time in the fine arts department trying to make sure I lived up to his standard instead of settling for my own. And it was the work that I had to put in, the expectations I had to meet, that allowed me to redefine what it meant to be me as an adult and as a man. And so having a teacher like that in your life is just something so, so extraordinary. And the last time I was on campus, before this ride today, was at the celebration of his retirement. We still kept in touch afterwards, though. Still emailed each other, still wrote letters, sent him books that I had written, things like that. And sadly, a few years ago, he passed away. Just one of those very special people I was fortunate enough to have in my life that because of his mere presence in it made me such a better person than I ever would have been if I didn't take his classes. So the University of Florida, because of that, because of the growth you have between childhood and adulthood, and the personal and lasting impact that my experiences here had on me, on who I became and who I am today, is the reason that this campus will always be not just an awesome motorcycle ride and an awesome story to share with you guys, but just such a critical moment in what it takes for me to be who I am today. And those sort of experiences are irreplaceable. The University of Florida is the 5th largest single-campus university in the U.S. It has over 55,000 students. That includes 34,000 undergrads and over 20,000 graduate students. Man, that's a lot of people. Well, it seems only appropriate as we are on the University of Florida campus and the alligator is, the mascot, is that we feed Algo the alligator. You know the deal, algorithms. It's just a computer program tracking to see what people do when they watch videos, and the more people do, the more they interact, the longer they watch, the more they do things that the algorithm cares about, the more they will let other people know about the video. So that's why people always ask you to like and subscribe and comment, and hey, if you like this video, those sort of things. So look, I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying that if you like the video, push buttons, say things, write things, I don't know, whatever you want to do or don't do, that's fine with me. I'm just letting you know that's how the algorithm works, so that if you've enjoyed this and you want to share it with others, just interact with the video in one way or another, that'd be great. Or if you just like the Navi-Gator videos we do here. The more you interact with this video or any of them, the better chance that other people will get to enjoy it as well. But I will leave that up to you. One of the things that I did, I worked every day when I was in college in some facet. My car broke down in my junior year, and I lived about 4 miles away from campus, and I only had my best friend's bicycle. Let me use his bicycle as a 10-speed. And so I had to ride my bike 4 miles to school every day to go to class. This is my senior year. And then I would ride 4 miles past campus to work. And then I would ride 4 miles back to campus for rehearsals and things like that. And then I'd ride 4 miles back home. So I was riding a bike 16 miles a day. And because of my schedule and the different things you do as a senior in a theater program where you do some traveling and performing and competitions and things like that, there were some classes my senior year that because I was going to have absences, that I could not miss a single day when I was in town because I would have failed the classes because of absence. So every single day when I was in town, no matter what the weather was like, no matter how I felt, it didn't matter. I had to ride my bike 16 miles a day. And I remember talking to my friends who fortunately didn't have to do that. I kept thinking, what the heck do you guys do with your day? How do you not have straight A's? I mean, I spend so much time riding my bike. I've had to work every single day I've been in college in order to stay in college. And I just did not know how people who were lucky enough to get scholarships, that didn't have to work, that had a car that worked, that could drive everywhere. How did you not fill your time with doing the work to get straight A's? It was just, I just couldn't comprehend it. It was outside of my experience. Sports television, you may be familiar with a beverage called Gatorade. Well, that was developed on campus in 1965 by a team of researchers led by a guy named Robert Cade. It was to help the Gator athlete, and when it worked, they started selling it everywhere. In 2006, Tim Tebow, Urban Meyer beat Ohio State to win the championship. And then in 2008, they did it again, defeating Oklahoma. In 2006, the same year they won the football national championship, they also won the men's basketball national championship, beating UCLA. And the next year they repeated, beating Ohio State. It was the first school to hold football and men's basketball titles at the same time in the same academic year. That's awesome. They've also won baseball national titles, softball national titles, gymnastics, outdoor track and field, women's tennis, women's indoor track and field, men's indoor track and field, and a ton of others. I'm sure if you were at the school in the early 2000s, the well-known phrase really meant something, that it was great to be a Florida Gator because the athletics were killing it. The campus newspaper, I'm sure it still exists in some form or another, but when I went to there, it was actually still a newspaper, and it's called The Alligator. And one of the cool traditions at the time is if you went to a basketball game in the O'Connell Center, and in the student section on one side of the court, when the opposing team was being introduced, everyone in the student section would hold up their newspaper to cover their face, so you just saw this wall of student Alligator newspapers. It was like we're disrespecting them, ignoring them completely. And then after the visiting team was introduced and they went to introduce the home team, the Gator basketball team, everyone would throw their school newspapers onto the court. in celebration, and then they would sweep them off the court, and it was a fun little tradition. And then one Saturday, we were playing the Kentucky Wildcats, which was historically always good. And we were not. So we did this tradition, which was fun, and everybody knew it, and it was cool. The problem was that this game was actually on television. And throwing the papers onto the court, and the time it took to sweep up those newspapers delayed the broadcast. And after that, we were not allowed to do it anymore. We were not happy that such a fun little tradition was screwed up because of television. My first job on this campus was actually at the bottom of this hill, Shands Hospital. The medical school there actually opened in 1958 and established Gainesville as a medical hub. And that's true. It is like one of the premier places for teaching and medical research in the country, probably even the world, actually. Now, it didn't look anything like this. My gosh, they have built this up so much. I worked for a very prestigious doctor that my father knew through his work as administrative assistant. I was so unworthy of being in this guy's presence, of being around anybody that he worked with. I was just not mature enough to really appreciate it other than knowing I was uncomfortable. And I just certainly didn't have the work discipline to do the work at the level that he required. I mean, I was a student aide. I don't think he was expecting a lot, but looking back, knowing who this man was and knowing what he was achieving, and the fact that I had any place in his office doing any work for him at any level, I just look back and go, my gosh, why was I even there? Out of the generosity of his heart and his friendship with my father, really is the only reason I was there. But you know what? It helped me pay the bills. Unfortunately for me in college, I always struggled with money. My parents retired. I'm the last of a lot of kids. So my parents retired the year I went to college. And so back then, they would look for financial aid. They would look at your parents, the last 2 years of your parents' income, and determine what you qualified for. Unfortunately, my parents, 2 years before I got there, were working. So I went to the financial aid and they said, well, don't worry. Next year, we'll go back 2 years and it'll show that in those last 2 years, your parents have been retired. But that's not the way it worked out. Because in my second year, the rules changed and they went back 3 years. So even though my parents had been retired 2 years, it still showed that they were working 3 years ago. And then in my third year, it went back 4 years, which showed that my parents were still working 4 years ago. So I never got financial aid. I was so broke all the entire time. I was so broke. Fortunately, one of my brothers gave me a gas credit card back when gas stations actually having small convenience stores was a new thing, and I was able to survive off of milk and like Oreo cookies and maybe peanut butter and a spoon. It was lucky if I could ever eat pizza. It was just, there was a bar in town called the Windjammer back in the day, and it was where the theater people hung out after rehearsals, and I had no money. And the only thing I could really afford was a Pepsi. Because one, it was free refills, and two, it was sugar. And when I had money, the only thing I ever ordered there was chicken fingers and French fries. And there was this great chef there, beautiful black woman. I'll never forget her. Her name was Diane. She had a gold tooth in the front. She was just so beautiful. In her 50s, just a beautiful soul. And I ordered the same thing every time. So when she saw me come in, she would expect me to order it. Except there's a lot of times I didn't have any money. And so she would make it and give it to me anyway. And I got to tell you, she's one of the primary reasons I survived going to college. It was her kindness of heart and generosity that she literally fed me like a mom. And because of that, every once in a while I got a free meal and that would get me through, I was just so fortunate to come across some really, really special people. I will say this, being in theater is a really cool thing, especially as an actor, because I get to act with not only some of the most talented people I've ever known in my life, but some of the most beautiful women I've ever known in my life. And it was so weird when you start acting and there's like a scene where you kiss somebody. And you're like, oh, I actually get to kiss this really beautiful woman for class. Sign me up. But theater was a really interesting experience. I had so much fun. And the lessons and the skills you learn from theater, I honestly believe everyone should do theater for 2 years, because the ability to study and read people and observe people and be able to express your ideas, be able to communicate, be able to talk in front of people, the ability to actively listen, the ability to move and walk and understand distractions and focus and communication. All these skills are necessary for performance in theater. I've used them every day in corporate America. And all of my friends, like my friend who worked in high levels of TV, to anyone I've known who's been in theater, who's worked in corporate America, has said it. Their theater experience, their theater training has been the most valuable skills that they have brought to their corporate jobs. The value is almost incalculable. And then you get to work with these really, like, theater is so much more than performance. All the art that goes into the ability to design and create these amazing sets, to the carpenters and the electricians and the painters that put that together, to the amazing people who create all the wardrobes and the sewing and the design and the collaboration with people, to the directors and the stage direction and the lighting and just the whole experience is just, the actors get, all the focus and stuff, but my gosh, all of the talent and skill and collaboration all have to work together in a unified way to make a production really stand out. And I was so fortunate to be surrounded by so many talented people. And it's even more so with my experience in TV and things like that. When I see a movie today that's successful, I'm stunned, because it's astounding how many things have to happen correctly for that to actually work. It's hard to believe, but when you're around and surrounded by people who are exceptionally talented, they make it look easy. But the reality is it's never easy. That's why movies with like really great directors or cast or something, they just don't work sometimes. Yeah, even the best people, it just doesn't combine to make it special. It's just so hard to make art good, especially performance art of any sort. And when it is really good, just appreciate it for what it is. It's almost like a small miracle. That's how hard it is to do. And the friends I've made in the theater and performance, I still have today, because as you're going through these things of learning about yourself and then diving into these characters that aren't you, but you have to become them, and how you have to connect it to your strengths and your weaknesses, your experiences, your vulnerabilities, and you're sharing that experience with other people going through the same thing. You're all vulnerable in front of each other, and you're sharing that vulnerability, and then you're overcoming that for a greater purpose to do some sort of art. And that experience is connects you emotionally to people. And it's also, in some ways, also a very weird sense of false intimacy, because you're experiencing very intimate emotions for a character with another person sharing intimate emotions with you, both based in each of your own experiences, but performed in a character that isn't you and isn't them. And yet it has to come together. So it's just this weird dichotomy of intimacy and distance at the same time. It's so hard to explain, but yeah, so because of that, you create these really strong bonds with these people that you share those moments with. And those bonds don't go away for the most part. You always have that, because no one else outside of that artistic experience gets it or understands it or can make sense of it. At the end, you're the only people that can really appreciate it and understand it. I hope you have enjoyed this trip on the University of Florida campus and have tolerated and hopefully enjoyed my trip down memory lane of my time while I was here. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Time is the most valuable treasure we have, and the fact that you spend any of that with me means the world to me. So remember, when you're on the road, please be kind, be nice, and be generous to each other. And most of all, have fun. All right, I'll see you guys next time.